a little busy, I guess you could say, because you have all these needle points sticking out. But once you get the hang of it, there really is no problem with them. They would be so easy to work with. So when you get to the last stitch, you're just going to knit it like normal. Okay, so now your right needle's full, your left needle's empty. So you would take your empty needle and put it in your right hand. You would rotate, because you've already knitted these, you would rotate. Now this is your new left needle. You would slide the stitches to the end, take your new naked needle, and you would begin to knit these new stitches. Then you get to your last stitch, you knit it. Now you have a full right needle, a bare left needle. You transfer the left needle, the bare one, to your right hand. You rotate, because you already knitted this, and you start knitting your new stitches onto your empty needle. Of course, if you were following a pattern, you would do that, whatever pattern they said to go for. Okay, so now you have a full right needle, an empty left needle. You transfer the empty one to your right hand. You rotate to get to your next set of stitches, and you knit. Okay, so you knit your last. The first row on double pointed needles or circular needles are always hard because they're so loose. So now that we have these knitted, we have our empty needle. We see that our next needle has the stitch marker on it. This gap here can be closed up later when you finish your project. So now that you have your stitch marker, you know that you are starting a new row. So you would make the mark on it if you were counting rows. If not, you would continue knitting. And just so you know, when you knit in the round, whether it's on double pointed or circular, there is no back. So if you were doing a garter stitch, you could not just knit, because if you just knit, you would get stockinette stitch, which I will show you here. So we just knitted a row. We're going to start knitting another row, which is, if we had straight needles, would become garter stitch. But since we are working in the round, we're going to get stockinette, because all the bumps from your stitches are transferred to the back because you're working in the round and you never turn your work. So this is 2 knitted rows, so that is stockinette since I am in the round. In the back, there is what would be your garter stitch or reverse stockinette. So this is the funnier work. But if your pattern was calling for garter stitch while knitting in the round, you would have to knit and purl every row. So when you came across your stitch marker after you've knitted the round, you would have to purl, which is what I'll show you now. So let's pretend this is the start of our row. You have your yarn here, you've just knitted your first row. You would take the yarn, pull it between the needles, so now it's in the front. And you would start, hold it in the front, make sure it's always in the front, otherwise you'd be knitting. And you're going to purl. So now that you are knitting in the round, you knitted your first row, purled your second row to get the garter stitch in the round. So just know that if you're doing a garter stitch in a round, you have to knit and purl. You knit one row, then you would pull your yarn to the front and you would purl. Then when you got back to your stitch marker, you would pull your string to the back and you would knit, and that's how you get garter stitch in a row. Otherwise, you will just be getting stockinette stitch. And that is how you knit in the round using double pointed needles.